Thank you, Manan, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here to share United's story. Again, I'm Sanjay Nair. I head up at United our data, AI, and analytics engineering teams. And I'm going to be adding to Manan's product and technology story the customer perspective of our journey of how we transformed our cloud data, a journey from a cloud data into Redshift. So we'll talk about that, and the topics I'll cover will start with a quick introduction about our team, and then talk about our problem statement and the challenges we faced. Talk about our solution, how we worked and partnered with AWS to design an architecture that laid the foundation for our transformation, and then close out with our path forward and where the journey we feel will continue over the next near future. So our mission at United Airlines is to be the best airline in aviation. And that's more than just size of the number of flights per day or our route network, the number of destinations we fly to, or the number of customers we carry. It's also to deliver the best customer experience, drive the highest customer loyalty, and engender an engaged employee workforce. But what's really exciting is our growth story that we are calling United Next. And it's about adding more than 700 aircraft over the next few years, almost doubling our fleet. And what's really exciting about it is the way we are going about it is what we call with our motto, good leads the way. And it's about doing good for the communities that we are privileged to serve and the customers that we carry on our aircraft. Now, one of our leaders had called United a technology company with wings. And if that's a true statement, I would say data is the fuel that drives the technology, that drives the airline. And what we have is a really complex business, whether it's in flight operations or network operations or in-flight or our revenue management, our tech ops and maintenance. And it's data that really connects the dots between these complex business domains and divisions for them to create value for our airline. And data engineering team that I have the privilege of leading covers our commercial, our operations, our digital, and beyond, the entire enterprise. So what we faced with our prior technology platform and our architecture was, of course, the scale. We had over 50 business domains, thousands of users, hundreds of thousands of workloads. But the real challenge was the data were in silos, and that's an understatement. And this was primarily because of the variety of legacy platforms that we had. Through no fault of anybody, but over the past 20, 25 years and even more, we are a 100-year airline, people brought in solutions to solve problems that eventually became just point solutions. So it was not just data silos, it was like huge walls that we had to overcome to get data together. And this is hard to believe, but it was not just data between domains that were a challenge. Sometimes even within a business domain, it was a challenge to get these data to join together and come up with the analytics and the business value that was needed. And of course, there was inconsistent data quality because of the challenge to bring these data together with the joins. So what was the outcome? The outcome really was it took weeks and months to get data to our business users. And so the outcome at the end of the day was not insights and actionable insights. It really ended up being department reporting because value at a more higher level could not be generated. And of course, we had big challenges around cyber and security. Because of the sprawl of data systems, we could not have a good, consistent approach to data security, which was really critical in this current world. So then how did we tackle it? We got together with our strategic partners and with AWS especially as our cloud partner. And we figured of a way to get aligned with our business first. So we went really on a listening tour, and that's really important. We listened to all of our business users to understand what their needs are. And there are big, huge business domains and small as well. So we had to cater to all the needs. So one of the big first guiding principles to all of this was a purpose-built data access layer. And Manan had alluded to it a little bit earlier. And what this did really was cater to the needs of everybody and was built on top of the lakehouse architecture with AWS. Now, what we also heard from our business users was there's an insatiable sort of demand, of course, for data. We had talked about the growth that we have, right? So there's going to be big, huge volumes. And so that was like we had to cater to that. And cloud and AWS, of course, was a big strength, was scalability from a volume perspective. The second need was around more and more real-time data needs. And this was to get real-time operational insights from our data. And this was the second V, the velocity that was needed for our business users. And again, this was a strength from the architecture that we had. The third was around variety of data, right? And so during COVID especially, we had COVID documents that our customers were uploading on our digital channels. And so these had to be figured out. Also, voice as a data asset, images as well. So this was all data artifacts that could not be handled in our previous legacy platforms. And that's just something that we had to take care of. And the bigger need really was our customers, our internal customers, didn't want to hunt and peck for data all over the place, right? And so we had to unify our data and distribute it, though, in a business domain architecture, but it had to be in one place so that they could get to it and really have the next point, which is having an interconnected data platform, where they could get value out of it quickly. Now, all of this had to be done, plus we had to migrate data from our legacy data platforms. So what this meant really was we couldn't hang a pardon our dust or under construction sign outside our shop and say that we'll get back to your problems later. We had to solve and add business value at the same time that we were doing this whole transformation and migration of data as well. So that was some of the big sort of challenges that we had to address with the solution. So what were some of the key decisions and learnings? And I'm going to focus on these four. And this is sort of the part of the session where we share the information and tell you some of our learnings about what we had. So focus early on data quality. The fourth V, if you will, is on trust, veracity, if you will. And then all of our business users wanted to trust the data. And to have that, we had to have the mechanisms in place to make sure that the data was validated. The second was around reliability, really. And to have an observability framework that was implemented with the light, right? Logging, monitoring, tracing, to make sure that we could build on the trust that the customers wanted to have on our platform. The third was around resilience, business continuity. More and more data, as I mentioned, was in real time, which had operational implications and impact, right? So that had to be built in, and AWS really, again, the strength was around this cross-region replication, and that was very important for our learnings as well. The fourth really was, as I mentioned earlier, we were laying the runway at the same time that planes were taking off and landing. It feels like an impossible thing, but that's what we were doing. We were building our platform at the same time that we were doing migration as well, right? And so we leaned very heavily on AWS, partnered very closely with them to make sure that the capacity planning aspect of our cloud infrastructure, as a combination of provisioning and serverless, was done with that in mind. So these were some of our key learnings. And to talk about the journey, this happened primarily during COVID time, and that was bringing to life where you don't want to let a crisis go to waste. So while some days there were more customers in our airports than employees, we were spending the time in data and engineering and digital technology to architect and build out our platform that would hold us for good stead when we knew that customers would come back, and that we hit almost 2 years later, right? So in this journey, one of the most exciting sort of things that we built was around machine learning. And that is something that we built on top of our United Data Hub that we call it. It's our data platform on AWS. And that really, again, got real value and use from a machine learning perspective with the data that we had. And some of the results here are for you to see. We grew our data warehouse 3x, our batch pipeline 6x, and our streaming pipelines 3x as well. So these outcomes really built on the virtuous cycle, and more data is now getting onboarded as the trust in the data is building. Now this is the quintessential architecture diagram, a little bit of a eye chart, but I want for you to have really a few key takeaways from this slide. So the perspective of what we gained from this. The first fundamental philosophy shift that was in this architecture, which is really sort of latent, is in the past, it took weeks and months for us to get our data to market. That was primarily because folks had to spell out every little data field, every aspect of the metadata. It had to be documented. In this new architecture, we could move our data on block perhaps into S3, and then we could do it in a more agile fashion, move the data that we needed to our Redshift data warehouse. That was the first sort of fundamental philosophy shift. The second was around the layers, and Manan talked to it as well. The purpose-built architecture that we had and the separation even between storage and compute, that really gave us more flexibility and more rigor around our cyber and our security. And security matters. It's critical in this environment. And so that was really helpful, and these two fundamental philosophy shifts helped us in that area as well. And of course, Redshift is the crown jewel of this architecture and this environment. And of course, it's fully managed with AWS. They take care of the infrastructure. We made use of some key capabilities in terms of performance, and Manan talked about that as well. Concurrency scaling was important to make sure that we had performant queries. Minimizing data movement and maximizing data sharing, things like federated queries that we're using to make sure that happens. And that was really helpful for our users as well. Now, of course, from a pipeline perspective, we are largely a Spark shop. For batch pipelines, we use AWS Glue, but there's more and more demand for real-time and streaming pipelines, and we use EMR with MSK and Kinesis for that as well. But we also built accelerators and adapters bolted on top of this platform. And that what you see in the middle here is what we call Icon, a framework that we built that gave us flexibility around audit, balance, control frameworks. It also gave us more flexibility in terms of accelerating our data engineering development activities on the cloud. Now, again, AWS was a big help that we leaned on in terms of creating these hybrid environment, where it's a combination of provisioned as well as serverless that was really useful and positive for us. But this architecture was from a technology side of things, and that's not just all we wanted to transform. We also wanted to transform our data culture. And that's where this technology platform really helped. The first really I'm going to talk about is machine learning. I mentioned that earlier. We built what we call our Mars platform on top of UDH, and that really accelerated the availability of data. In machine learning, 80% of it, as you're aware of, is having the right data in the right place. And so we were able to build a machine learning platform with a feature store, feature catalog, model registry, all of that on top of our data platform. The second, of course, is to enable our business users to connect all this data together, and that we built a data mesh architecture for this, and that really accelerated the availability of data to the market. And what this really did is empowered our data scientists, our analysts, to be able to self-serve their data. And we talked about a little bit the adapters and accelerators we built. Some of the pipelines could be entirely self-served with our data scientists as well. And that was capabilities that they didn't have earlier and accelerated time to market as well. With all of this with the goal of building analytics communities that would be sharing knowledge, sharing information, train people where it's needed on their own. It's a bottoms-up approach that really is spreading what we call analytics everywhere, which is important for us to really gain value from all of that work that we did in our data platform. So those were some of the key benefits that we got from this work that we did. Now, in terms of our path forward, of course, we want to continue to partner with AWS as they build more and more capabilities on Redshift. And some of the key ones that we'll be using going forward, we're using now as well as in the near future, is going to be things like the cross-region data sharing, minimizing data movement with zero ETL integration, of course having serverless and more capabilities coming on that, as well as Redshift Spectrum. And of course, our goal as we get more and more operationally critical with this data platform, it's going to be critical to have a resilient and reliable data platform. And self-healing data pipelines is something that we're working on, where there's more and more automation that's made available in this platform, where the platform really becomes resilient and highly available. And all of this, of course, from a perspective of adding the interconnected data with the data mesh for all of our business users, that they can continue to gain more and more value out of the data. So the real two key takeaways from this really is we want the data to be interoperable, and we want to minimize data movement so that our data engineers can then focus on creating data products that are ready for our business users to use, and so that they can create products that can create a great customer experience for our customers as they fly our aircraft.